Within Kingdom Hearts 3, there is a mystery about the story that nobody discusses. Unraveling this mystery connects Quadratum to our other characters and could reveal what may be a huge shift in Kingdom Hearts 4's story as the search for Sora's whereabouts continue after Riku's departure. More specifically, after the events of Melody of Memory, Mickey is in Scarlet Kylum and Dawn and Goofy are exploring past worlds Sora's visited to find traces of him. And this aspect is what I believe will lead to a fascinating revelation from the duo. Our mystery begins in a past world we'd ventured through in Kingdom Hearts 3, the very world where the Kingdom Hearts universe would first acknowledge a popular video game known as Verum Rex. Throughout the course of the Toy Box world, we have another encounter with young Xehanort, an encounter that leaves young Xehanort blasting us into a game called Verum Rex Beat of Lead. To everyone playing Kingdom Hearts 3, this is just a classic minigame segment during a world visit, but it's much more than that. A much similar thought occurred from the community when we saw the Verum Rex cinematic. Many would refer to this as a cool Versus 13 reference at the time and think nothing more of it. This would be until the secret ending was released, and along with Kingdom Hearts 3 Remind and now Kingdom Hearts 4, it's very clear that Yozora is going to be a pivotal character in Kingdom Hearts' future story, along with Verum Rex. Another way of viewing this Verum Rex game we were forcefully summoned into during the story is that this is a path to Quadratum, as some characters refer to it, the other side of our world. This could be a portal that our other characters could use to get to Quadratum. However, the portal isn't the only interesting part. We need to explain just how this portal was created and why it may exist. To understand this, we must understand the state the Toy Story world was in when we would arrive, which allowed the other side of this world to bleed into ours. As we deep dive into this, remember to subscribe, and if you want to go the extra mile and get insight into future speculation and theories, we have a Patreon link below as well. When we arrive in the Toy Box world, the toys mentioned to us that their friends had vanished when the Heartless and other weird things started happening. We'd get further elaboration on why this happened from young Xehanort, who would explain that this toy box we play in is a copy of the real world.
What's that mean?
It probably means they split this world in two. Your friends in one world, us in the other. Only one of the worlds is real, and the other is just really convincing.
You could take this a step further and say this is a loosely similar scenario to what happened with Sora and Riku in Dreamed of Distance's worlds. However, these were the sleeping worlds, and as far as we know, Toy Box wasn't asleep during this visit. There's no signs of Dream Eaters or anything. But what if young Xehanort, the villain of Dream Drop Distance, being the villain of choice in this world, is a clear sign at a parallel being established by the writers? While it's unlikely this world was asleep during our visit, the worlds being split in general is very peculiar. If this isn't the sleeping realm, then are we to be sure this copy still is a part of the realm of light? During Kingdom Hearts 4's first trailer, in the few lines of dialogue it had, we got told that Quadratum is a sort of afterlife. Following up on that information, the belief for why this theoretical portal to Verum Rex or Quadratum is even able to exist is due in fact to the worlds being split in two, and Toy Box being taken out of its normal state. I believe there is a correlation to the worlds being split and this afterlife in Quadratum. This altering of the world and its hearts allowed a cousin of sleep to be a lot closer to the world than it would typically be. This afterlife bleeding into our world was in the form of this simple little mini game that just happens to be Verum Rex, the very world that is connected to Quadratum, Yozora, and ultimately Kingdom Hearts 4. Maybe this isn't convincing. It could just as easily be a simple mini game, and as young Xehanort says, we are playing it from inside the screen we were launched into. That could be all it is. A game. But when you go into this mini game and decide to explore it, it's actually possible to see a city in the distance. Maybe this is the same city we see in the secret ending. Actually, if this proves correct, it's most definitely the same one we see in the Verum Rex cinematic. Now, while Riku has a lead through the Nameless Star in the final world, and is on his way to what could be Quadratum, Dawn and Goofy are still searching for clues through the past visited worlds. This gives them a clear reason to revisit Toy Box and make this discovery. It's the only world in Kingdom Hearts 3 that mentions Yozora, and the only question from here would be how exactly do they put the pieces together? It's possible that through another conversation with the Nameless Star, she shares the name of Yozora like she did with Sora in his visit to the final world. Eventually, someone could relay this info to Donald and Goofy, and it prompts them to take another look at this world. This would lead them back to Galaxy Toys, where they would likely find that this portal is closed. Now, this is a bizarre turn of events, but in the end credits of Kingdom Hearts 3, it's heavily implied that Toy Box returned to normal, likely when the Xehanorts were defeated. That copy of the world probably wasn't going to stay the whole time, so through some turn of events, they'd have to recreate this scenario of the world being split, though Donald and Goofy likely don't have the power to do so without the Keyblade, but they know many who could be of help. Riku used the power of waking to travel to the world the Nameless Star was from. It's unknown if everyone else can use that same portal Riku created, or if they need another method. Especially since Riku was already on the other side, it's likely they would need to find another path. And this path through Toy Box could very well just be the path they take. This world is very clearly a special one in the Kingdom Hearts series, and the belief is that the World Toy Story will likely make more appearances in the future. But there is one more thing we have yet to discuss. You see, there is two sides to everything, and while we may have figured out the path to one side, what about when they do make it to the other? They'll need to find some other way back. Well, we could always talk about that another time. I'll see you guys in the next one.
This world is just too small.
Xehanort's story may have come to an end, but there's a lot of blank points that could still be filled. A character who split himself into multiple different beings, who would all become their own versions of themselves. While all his incarnations are one, at the same time they're all very different representations of his character. There's much controversy surrounding the idea of Xehanort's return. Not because the character isn't well loved as an antagonist, but because it'd be seen as the series relying on old material when it should be paving a new path for itself. However, I don't fully agree with this ideology. Kingdom Hearts' past is its future, a story where every block is the foundation for the next one. This doesn't appeal to everyone, but to many Kingdom Hearts fans, it's everything that makes this series so unique and interesting to talk about. This mystery that makes every turning point in the story so intriguing. So let's talk about another one. Xehanort is one of the most mysterious characters in the franchise. And I'm not referring to his older self who would enact his plan, but rather the young boy who would stare down that dark road and willingly be the pawn that'd give the world hope. Young Xehanort in Dark Road is a curious character, always questioning actions in the worlds he'd visit, and always second-guessing the philosophies of light, not because he necessarily liked the darkness, but because he saw the hypocrisy in light and those who'd advocate for it, even calling these people false lights who shouldn't dictate the future.
Darkness lurks in the pit of everyone's heart. Their light is a total farce.
I find one of the most intriguing scenes of Xehanort to be during his conversation with the Master of Masters, a moment I often revisit. During this conversation, young Xehanort is still a Keyblade Master in training, but he's not a fool, so why does he simply take the advice and the mentalities the Master gives to him? Is it simply because he's young and easy to manipulate, or was he just playing along? Some could see Xehanort as a victim of the Master's manipulation, but there's slight evidence to suggest that Xehanort knew about a bigger picture at play. The sheer fact that old man Xehanort knew Vanitas wasn't from Ventus's heart is a big suspicion, yet he'd play along anyways, acting as if he was. Along with Terranort, a version of Xehanort who'd have slight amnesia and play the role of a scientist under Ansem the Wise. He would purposely send Kairi and Melody of Memory in search of a Keyblade wielder, not under the pretenses for his greater plan, but to save their world. Adding to this, Xehanort has very clear knowledge of the other side, or Quadratum, even if only by existence alone, saying to Kairi that if she were to end up in this world, we have failed.
If you arrive in a world that's neither of light nor darkness, but somewhere on the other side, your task will be far from easy. If that happens, you must abandon your search. We have failed.
A line that Melody of Memory seems to insinuate has a much deeper meaning. These are pieces to a greater knowledge that Xehanort theoretically has no business knowing about, considering the role he was supposed to play as the pawn in the Master's plan. Another thing to mention is that in Kingdom Hearts 3, it strikes me as bizarre that a Sora time traveling in the past would interact directly with old Master Xehanort, and Xehanort would know what Sora is up to. This Xehanort isn't surprised Sora is time traveling, isn't surprised that he lost. He almost seems okay with it, and it almost seems like he's guiding Sora as well. There's also these interactions in Kingdom Hearts 3 where Sora is clearly being guided to the decision he'd make in Remind, where he'd end up traveling in time to save Kairi, only to pay the price himself. It's almost as if Xehanort winning wasn't the ultimate game plan to all of this in Kingdom Hearts 3. It's almost as if Sora making it to the other side was the goal, which brings us up to speed, and the title of this video. Sora is trapped in Quadratum, a afterworld. Strelitzia, who is supposed to be dead, should be a clear indicator that Keyblade wielders can end up here. At least possibly. Xehanort passed on in Kingdom Hearts 3, but what if him and Ericus are now living in another world? A world where the worries of training and being a Keyblade master aren't in the cards, and they can just be normal boys and normal friends in a world without light and without darkness. It may be a long shot, but Sora's way back could be the very person that brought him here. After the release of Kingdom Hearts Dark Road, the series director would draw this artwork of young Xehanort in a raincoat, and the community would analyze this artwork and compare very small details to areas in Japan. Some seem to think this teases a Xehanort return in Quadratum, something I believe would be a very interesting interaction, as Xehanort still has a role to play in the Kingdom Hearts series. Not as his older self, but as his younger self, in potentially guiding Sora home to finish this, once and for all. Kingdom Hearts 4 gives off the impression that Sora is going to be living a small life here. There does seem to be creatures that invade this world as well, but when he's not fighting enemies, he could be doing normal teenager things, or trying to find any clues as to how he gets back. This could be where he stumbles upon a boy who looks a lot like Xehanort, and this would lead to him helping him in some capacity. Perhaps from his research as Xehanort, he figured out a way to not only access this world, but also escape it. Xehanort could also use a similar method Riku used with the Nameless Star. Since the Nameless Star was from Quadratum, Riku was able to open a portal to her home world in Melody of Memory. Perhaps Xehanort being from their world, the opposite could occur. This does become a long shot. Maybe there's a more lengthier path that could lead to the same result, because this becomes a lot more tricky with Xehanort being dead, or the equivalent since he's in this world. But you could make a similar argument that the Nameless Star is close to death herself, not having any physical essence to hold on to. Xehanort, I believe, is the perfect character for this, as it directly confronts Sora with his greatest enemy throughout the Kingdom Hearts series in a setting where they don't have to fight. Xehanort willingly accepted defeat to Sora in Kingdom Hearts 3 and moved on. I'm sure Sora would be wondering why he decided to concede defeat after trying essentially his entire life to achieve his goals. Through this conversation, Xehanort could explain to him the real reason he went down this path in the first place, and this could be where Sora finds out about the greater threat in the Lost Masters, and his need to return home becomes pivotal. Xehanort doesn't need to return as the good guy, or even from the perspective of being misunderstood. In my eyes and many of the characters, he's still the villain who took the friends and worlds of many, separating Sora, Riku, and Kairi, possessing Terra, casting Aqua into the realm of darkness for a decade. He still did all of these things, but I see potential in more depth for why he did them, out of fear of what the Lost Masters were capable of, knowing they were returning, and the bigger picture at play in this new saga. I think we've seen enough of Old Man Xehanort. His story is over. If the series truly does explore this character more, who Nomura said in the past was his favorite, I'd love to see more of young Xehanort, and Terranort as well. Terranort knew a lot for a scientist under Ansem the Wise. This version of Xehanort would also be the one who'd do experiments on Subject X, who we know from the secret reports is a old Keyblade wielder from the Key Saga. There's a lot of mystery to explore here. Young Xehanort, on the other hand, while being around since Dream Drop Distance, has been explored more in games like Dark Road, but I feel like there could still be more to get out of this character that isn't locked behind a phone screen, despite how great the story was. But now I'm open to it because I think there's a lot of potential for some great storylines and possibilities here. Also, if Melody of Memory or Remind were any indication, there's definitely more story to tell. In the game mentioned, Kingdom Hearts Dark Road, they dubbed Xehanort the Child of Destiny. A very interesting term we haven't seen used in Kingdom Hearts ever. A role that you would think would be meant for a character like Sora, but it actually does fit Xehanort more, because Sora isn't meant to be some chosen one character, but Xehanort definitely fits that archetype. An incredibly gifted Keyblade wielder with the wits to go along with it, but with the grit to make the decisions that no one else would dare. Doing what no one else is willing to do. Being the perfect pawn. The beginning of the end. A phrase that symbolizes many things. And when it comes to Kingdom Hearts, it's quite fitting. To have an end, there must be a beginning. And for a beginning to have meaning, an end is inevitable. The phrase is simultaneously illogical and partially redundant, but makes so much sense. We refer to instances like this as a sort of paradox. There are small ones every day, but the bigger a paradox gets, the less that you realize you're in one. The Kingdom Hearts timeline is a paradox of conflict created by two forces battling for control. The story itself is about overcoming this conflict. From the point of view of those who participate in it, no conflict is without its spectators, however. The Book of Prophecies and the Master's Eye are two key elements to this paradox and overcoming it. The Book of Prophecies details key events in the Kingdom Hearts timeline. This is done through the Eye of the Master, an eye he placed on the Keyblade he'd give to his apprentice Luxu. And this eye would appear on many Keyblades throughout the Kingdom Hearts series, often by other wielders who harbor darkness. Through this, there is certainty that the book at least covers events up until the ending of Kingdom Hearts 3's conflict. This book has survived, and has even been used to nurture future generations of Keyblade wielders. However, in the modern day, very few know where this book is. The book couldn't exist without the eye, yet the eye is not allowed to be near the book. The reason for this is because of a temporal paradox it could cause. What the Master is describing is something called the bootstrap paradox. This is a cause and effect paradox, when something that happens in the future, which is the cause, that triggers an effect in the past. Example being the eye in the future seeing said events, causing the Master to write those events down in the past. This creates a forever loop and contradiction, but this is typically under the thesis that a timeline is a straight line moving forward, which in Kingdom Hearts is debatable. Since explained in Kingdom Hearts Dark Road, the timelines of worlds are capable of being on their own axis, though despite that axis, they do still move forward, just at different speeds. However, this was only after the Keyblade War, as the worlds were repairing while being newly separated, so it's unclear whether these worlds would rejoin the one timeline, or if they still count as separate ones. Kingdom Hearts has even developed its timeline rules to be loosely within the confines of the bootstrap paradox, but we have mentioned other types of paradoxes. But what is a paradox truly? And what is the true paradox of Kingdom Hearts? Well, it's a lot simpler than you may think. The paradox is the only story of Kingdom Hearts that truly does repeat itself over and over again. And the paradox isn't just beginning, but it might finally come to an end. It's not just mere theory, but a matter of perspective about how one perceives the everlasting war between light and darkness. The Master of Masters foretold that their war was coming to an end, the cause being a Keyblade war that would spark among competing Keyblade warriors over the collection of light, which from that, darkness would breed among them. However, in Union Cross, it is discussed that the Keyblade War has been going on since the Master was a mere child. He says all this to his apprentice Luxu, who would sort of be a puppet for the Master to carry out this plan of his, to end the Keyblade War once and for all. Every time light and darkness do battle, a Keyblade War seems to take place. The Master's childhood, the Key Saga, Birth by Sleep, and even in Kingdom Hearts 3. You can't have light without darkness, so the two forces are destined to always do battle, as the battle of both creates a balance of opposing forces. But when it comes to the paradox of the Keyblade War, the story doesn't just lie within the war itself. The true story comes from the
They can take your world. They can take your heart. Cut you loose from all you know. But if it's your fate, then every step forward will always be a step closer to home.
The illusion of free will is a diverse concept when discussing a paradox, because how can free will truly exist when all endings are predetermined or destined to happen? This is the dilemma the chosen masters of light would find themselves in, a situation orchestrated by the master from the very beginning, purposely sending his disciples to fight against each other in an attempt to resolve a conflict that may or may not have even existed. The foretellers were mere tools for the master, a means to an end. They were needed to continue this story and were told from the beginning a war was going to happen that they could not avoid. Then, amidst the confusion among each, would disappear, throwing most of the chosen master's guilds into a panic, ultimately leading to yet another Keyblade War. The Master's ultimate plan, as he claims, is to cast the true darkness away from this world by using 13 vessels, 7 of which that will harbor the true, strongest darknesses of them all, which is why the Master would train 6 other powerful Keyblade wielders, including himself, that could harbor those darknesses. Among all the leaders under the Master, 2 in particular stand out. The first is a leader representing the sin of greed, Master Ava, the youngest of the foretellers, given a role to create a separate faction of Keyblade wielders who would be the seeds of light that would ensure the future. Perhaps the only foreteller that any of the Keyblade wielders would ever trust or bond with. Ava never liked the idea of the world's destiny being predetermined. She was instructed to pass one of the chosen leaders of the next world a book of prophecies, but would end up giving the book to someone else entirely. This would be the first clear sign of betrayal to the Master's will, which conveniently would lead to Master Ava being the only lost master to not make an appearance at the reunion in Kingdom Hearts 3's epilogue. This is no mere coincidence. Ava has chosen her side in this battle, and where she disappeared to after the Keyblade War, or why she wouldn't appear, is completely a mystery. Ava played a much more pivotal role in the Light's future than her peers, yet there's one character who was closer to the Master than anyone, and who I believe is the biggest victim of this story. He goes by many names, Luxu being one of them. Luxu has suffered from this paradox more than anyone, dubbed the Traitor by the Master before he would set off on a journey spanning multiple lifetimes, vessels, worlds, and incarnations. Luxu seems to be a compassionate individual, with loyalty being one of his strong traits, as that seems to be a clear reason the Master put him into this role, despite showing his disagreements with the Master's plan to use their bodies as vessels for darkness to be destroyed in. He still continues despite this with the role the Master laid out, carrying the box, passing down the Keyblade, and allowing the Master's eye to witness the future. Luxu isn't just the victim of this paradox. He's at the center of it all. At every point in history where the eye can see, Luxu is near. With a Master willing to sacrifice so many lives, why is Luxu still maintaining loyalty? Luxu doesn't agree with the sacrifice, so is it sheer loyalty for the Master? Or perhaps there's something more convincing that makes Luxu believe this could all be worth it in the end. Even after this conversation with the Master, Luxu would have an altercation with Ava right before the Keyblade War. Luxu's tone would give off a very depressed demeanor, knowing the end of the world is looming. There's no glimmer of hope or fight, just what's next? Luxu, in a story of a book called the Kingdom Hearts Character Files, would talk about the organization's search for the black box, questioning things like its height or what type of box is it, loosely reminiscent of the conversation Luxu would have with Luxord. Though reading this story is kind of bizarre. It's coherent enough, but it's almost as if Luxu isn't all there, just bits and pieces. Despite seeing Luxu with the Keyblade and the box in the end of Kingdom Hearts 3, there's this feeling that he's questioning himself. Like, does he remember what the box is, or what it looks like? Why does he have the organization go searching for something they have no business finding? The belief is that Luxu was on the end of his mental rope, multiple lifetimes, just playing a role. He ends this story saying, "It's just around the corner. I'm so close to my reunion, and with it, fulfilling my mission." He still seemed to be cognizant of the fact that he was on a mission set out by the Master, like a light in the darkness. Even in his death in Kingdom Hearts 3 as Xigbar, he seemed happy to finally perish and say good riddance to this character. The Keyblade returning to him could have helped him greatly, though there's still a question of if all those years of wear and tear on him have affected him beyond repair. He is not the same character the Master would set out on these missions centuries ago, but he still would complete his role all the same. This begs the question, however, how is he the traitor? The Master has said that what's in the book isn't important, but rather what comes after, because there's a other side to this plan, and when you're trapped in a paradox, what you could really use is a Overcoming this paradox took playing the long game, but through this, an interesting discovery was made. Another world exists beyond the confines of light and darkness. This is said to be a sort of afterworld, a place Sora would disappear to after abusing the powers of waking. However, this world seems to have been discovered by the Master and another character. Let's say the Master's plan succeeds, and he were to defeat the 13 true forms of darkness within the foretellers and other strong-hearted vessels. If they were to go to this afterworld, perhaps the Master could save them before they are lost forever, now that he knows how to get there. Or perhaps the ultimate plan would be to not use the vessels at all, and this opens a path to trap these darknesses in this world to be forever cast out of ours. Though one could imagine that a plan to trap the darknesses would only work for so long, creating a problem only those later in the timeline would have to deal with, much similar to Kingdom Hearts Dark Road. There is not enough known about Quadratum and the Afterworld to come to any conclusions, but it's the mystery of this world that we can't even fathom that could be the answers to all of our questions. Where there is unknown, there's also an opportunity for discovery. Darkness, unlike anything the Guardians have seen, is coming, which will ultimately lead to another Keyblade War, but this war has the potential to wipe out everything and leave nothing behind. This is if darkness were to win, but if the light wins and they aren't defeated completely, it'll only be delaying another conflict to repeat itself once more. This chess game the Master has with darkness, it took multiple lifetimes for the pieces to line up, and with Sora out of the equation for now, what's next is a lot of uncertainty. Is the Master really on the side of light, or is he just a strong darkness who's playing the long game, waiting to wipe out light for good? Or perhaps a corrupted light, who thinks the only way out is annihilation of either side? Master Luxu, who is the Master's closest disciple, took the brunt of this conflict paradox head on, through multiple semblances. It's interesting to think about what his betrayal could be, if there even is one. The next steps Luxu takes could be the defining moments that decide everything. Will he side with Sora and the Guardians, or will he side with his friends and the Master, who he's finally reunited with after a long, grueling journey? The heart resides within the soul, which in turn is guided by fate to its rightful place. These are words shown to us before we see what is Sora waking up in Quadratum in Kingdom Hearts 4. This isn't just a story about fate and a paradox. It's also a story about hope within it. It'll be interesting to see just where fate and hope will lead light and darkness, as they prepare for yet another clash, and as others search for a reality beyond that could be the key to saving theirs. There's this mystery from one of Kingdom Hearts' endings that keeps me awake at night. If explored, this mystery could have a major effect on Kingdom Hearts 4 and maybe even Kingdom Hearts Missing Link. It involves a bizarre scene with Marluxia and Larxene in Kingdom Hearts Union Cross. If you're not caught up to the mobile game stories, that might be okay. You still should be able to follow along, though I do still recommend you watch Union Cross. And make sure to subscribe if you like diving into Kingdom Hearts lore and theories. So during a post-credit cutscene to Kingdom Hearts Union Cross's finale, we get a cutscene that we call Destinations. It shows the destinations of all the different Union leaders and where they end up throughout the Kingdom Hearts timeline after the events of Union Cross, which lead to Daybreak Town's destruction. Before that happens, they take these machines called the Lifeboat, which allows a body and heart to travel through time safely. Ephemer's lifeboat does not activate, and we see him in Scarlet Kylum. Brain ends up in Scarlet Kylum later in the future. Scold's is unknown, but is theorized to be Radiant Garden, and Laurium and Elrina, Marluxia, Larxene end up in Dwarf Woodlands and Enchanted Dominion. And these two locations are what I want to talk about especially today, since we actually do have some evidence backing up some of the claims I'm about to make. So right off the bat, Laurium and Elrina land in Dwarf Woodlands and Enchanted Dominion, worlds that do not exist after Kingdom Hearts 1. And the organization is formed in some vague time period between before Kingdom Hearts 1 and sometime after Birth by Sleep. In Kingdom Hearts Dream Drop Distance, we see a cutscene where we see the initial formation of the organization with a lot of the people in Ansem Study becoming nobodies. Here we do see a Yenzo who is clearly a lot younger than the Yenzo we see right now and that we know right now, proving a little bit that maybe the organization was formed a little closer to after Birth by Sleep than it was before Kingdom Hearts 1. But exact timetables are still a little shaky on that. Laurium and Elrina are a lot younger in Kingdom Hearts Union Cross. We don't know the exact ages of a lot of Kingdom Hearts characters, but we do know that a lot of Kingdom Hearts characters range from young adults to teenagers. In Union Cross, they're even younger than that on average. Slight distinctions you can make that show this is Laurium's clearly shorter hairstyle compared to Chain of Memories, and Ventus's shorter hairstyle compared to what we see in Birth by Sleep. Also, Ventus in the Badlands is found by Xehanort a few years before Birth by Sleep. I'm establishing these ages and how there's clearly time that has passed here for one particular reason. As I said earlier, Dwarf Woodlands and Enchanted Dominion do not exist as worlds before Kingdom Hearts 1. They can only exist during Birth by Sleep or any time after Kingdom Hearts 1. And the reason this isn't after Kingdom Hearts 1 where Laurium and Elrina arrive is because the organization is already formed by Kingdom Hearts 1, and not to mention, not long after Kingdom Hearts 1, Chain of Memories takes place, where we see Marluxia and Larxene drastically aged up. So this scene is only taking place during or before even Birth by Sleep, meaning most characters are theorized or are proven to arrive during Birth by Sleep's time period. Marluxia in Dwarf Woodlands, Elrina in Enchanted Dominion, Ventus in the Badlands, and people even theorize Scold to be Subject X, which will mean that Scold arrived in Radiant Garden sometime around Birth by Sleep, which will later lead to Axel and Syax later becoming apprentices to Ansem the Wise, for a short period before they join the organization themselves. So because the exact formation of the organization is unknown, we can definitely pinpoint that it's after Birth by Sleep, and Dwarf Woodlands and Enchanted Dominion only exist in the realm of light during or before Birth by Sleep. There is a slight time gap that we don't know how big, where Laurium and Elrina could be doing anything. Just extra Keyblade wielders walking around in the background during Birth by Sleep's events before they join the organization and are likely recruited by Xigbar. This could be crazy to me for multiple reasons, because Marluxia in Kingdom Hearts 3 talked about how he now remembers his purpose for being upon his death as Marluxia. Laurium, during the final events of Union Cross, had latched on to hope that Strelitzia could still be out there somewhere, and a key motivation for even moving on was to see Strelitzia one day again. And I heavily believe that Laurium could be looking for Strelitzia during this time period. And maybe he did find a clue, and then right when he did, he would end up joining the organization. Or perhaps Strelitzia is what would lead to him joining the organization. I'm unsure, since Laurium and Elrond are on separate worlds, whether they eventually teamed up before joining the organization, or if they met again during the organization. It's a little bit of a 50-50 whether Laurium and Elrond retain their memories, because Ventus doesn't seem to retain his memories, but Brain does seem to retain his memories in Missing Link. Though you could say that they likely do, because Ventus not retaining his memories from Union Cross, seemingly, would largely likely be due to his interactions with the Darkness in Union Cross and his interactions with Xehanort in Birth by Sleep. Laurium and Elrond, however, don't seem to have anything like that happen to them until they join the organization. So until they do join the organization, there's no real reason for me to believe that they don't have their memories upon waking up at their destinations. Additionally, Laurium and Elrond would have to figure out ways to get off these worlds somehow, because they do join the Realm of Darkness, as we see in Kingdom Hearts 0.2. So if they're on these worlds the entire time, they would also likely go to the Realm of Darkness with it. These characters were also known to have connections to the Keyblade, which is why they were recruited into the organization in the first place, which was revealed in Kingdom Hearts 3. A lot of fans have speculated that a potential non-numbered title they could do is a Birth by Sleep 2. There's actually a decent bit of request for this next to Kingdom Hearts Verum Rex. This game could not only cover events of the Birth by Sleep trio post Kingdom Hearts 3, but dive into the Birth by Sleep time period more in general, where we discover what happened with Subject X, as well as how Laurium and Elrond joined the organization. There is a lot of plot points that seem to date back to Birth by Sleep, with it being alluded to that Vanias is one of the core darknesses, his formation is interesting. Laurium and Elrond arrived during the Birth by Sleep timeline, which is interesting. And then we have the mysterious disappearance of Subject X, which happened during Birth by Sleep as well. And after Kingdom Hearts Dark Road, and knowing that Xehanort, Ericus know about the Book of Prophecies, have read the Book of Prophecies, I feel like there's a lot more behind Ericus that should be explored in Birth by Sleep as well. Basically, this entire time period before Kingdom Hearts 1 and before the ending events of Birth by Sleep has a lot of mystery going on that I think is going to be pivotal to the upcoming saga. I don't believe that these things were just coincidences or just happened. I think it was very purposeful putting Laurium and Elrond in the Birth by Sleep timeline. They could have very easily put them in a time period on a separate world sometime before Kingdom Hearts 1. You just immediately see them get taken and joining the organization. But instead, they put them in a time period where the organization hasn't formed yet. So there must be a bigger mystery here that we've yet to even find out about. Maybe Laurium does discover the truth about Strelitzia and what happened to her. Maybe Laurium finds a clue that leads him to Quadratum and he was never able to reach it. I would love for these stories to be explored in a Birth by Sleep 2, in maybe Kingdom Hearts 4 or some cutscenes. I just want to know what happened here. I think the best case scenario would be getting another side game just covering all of this together so it could get that love, that treatment, get explored fully instead of just being like a couple cutscenes in KH4 and then they move on. Either way, I'll be satisfied, but I think the best case scenario would definitely be having a Birth by Sleep 2 equivalent. And there's also another aspect to this that I haven't dived fully into, that I will dive into in part 2 to this. There's a lot more to Strelitzia in Kingdom Hearts 4 than meets the eye. Kingdom Hearts is a franchise filled with many mysteries, along with the rich and deep story. This story and this world has kept millions of fans engaged throughout each iteration of Kingdom Hearts, and Kingdom Hearts 4 is no exception. In fact, one of the biggest mysteries in Kingdom Hearts and more recent ones has perhaps added itself another layer in Kingdom Hearts 4's trailer. This girl, right here. Some of you may not know her, and new Kingdom Hearts fans may not know much about why she's important. Unlike the last video, it may be a little tricky to follow along without being caught up in Kingdom Hearts Union Cross, though maybe this theory can convince you it's worth catching up. But just as a brief reminder, spoiler alert, she's dead, or should be. Within about 20 minutes or so of Strelitzia being introduced to the universe of Kingdom Hearts, she died, killed by darkness, and her death single-handedly would spark one of the biggest mysteries Kingdom Hearts has ever seen, about who murdered her. But that's not the mystery we're discussing today. Strelitzia is important because she was meant to be one of the Union leaders in Kingdom Hearts Union Cross. The Union leaders being Keyblade wielders picked by the Master of Masters and Foreteller Ava to keep the light alive leading into the future. But Strelitzia's plans as a Union leader were cut short by a much bigger plot started by the darkness. And I don't just mean the Heartless or the random dark beings we see throughout the Kingdom Hearts series. Well, I mean kind of, but I mean literal darkness, like a character who is the most powerful of all the darknesses and is the source of all darkness in the Kingdom Hearts universe. And this plot would directly lead into the Lost Masters arc we are beginning now with Kingdom Hearts 4. Which, speaking of, because Strelitzia is dead, it actually makes sense that she would appear in Quadratum. Sora is kinda dead, Strelitzia is super dead, and Quadratum is a sort of afterlife as far as we know. So her being there, as far as that logic goes, makes sense, right? Well, it wouldn't be Kingdom Hearts if that was all. There's actually a possibility Strelitzia is alive, meaning she possibly shouldn't be in Quadratum. And using this word a third time, because of Union Cross's finale, there is possibly two Strelitzias. Just bear with me as I prepare to explain some pretty wacky concepts. But that's the fun of Kingdom Hearts. This whole series can be just as wacky as it can be serious. And if you love Kingdom Hearts and theories, make sure to subscribe to the channel. During the finale of Kingdom Hearts Union Cross, concepts are speculated about how data from characters who lived in Daybreak Town before the war may still exist, and this could include Strelitzia. Because data of these characters still exist, it is possible to port that data into a vessel and possibly bring these characters back. It was learned from Elrena's Chirithy that a man in a black coat was seen walking about Daybreak Town with a person in a white coat who seems to be Strelitzia. It's worth noting that Marluxia also had a vision of Strelitzia in cutscenes before in a white coat after a fight with Maleficent, very similar to that of a haunting spirit. The two Strelitzias for this theory is the Strelitzia in Quadratum and the Strelitzia in the white coat who is assumingly with the Master of Masters. Which one is the real Strelitzia though? I think this is going to be the mystery in future games. If I'm betting, I'd say this Strelitzia in Quadratum is the real Strelitzia, since she by all accounts should be dead. It makes sense for her to be spending time in this world if that were the case. However, since the Master knows about this world as well, maybe this is where the Strelitzia in the white coat ends up, and she's purposely here to mess with Sora in some way. I think two Strelitzias is also a possibility because I have a core belief that Lauriam will play a big role in the next saga. Since Strelitzia is a sister, I think having the Strelitzia in the white coat built off of her data from Daybreak Town being a sort of antagonist for the characters in the Realm of Light, and to mess with Lauriam and Marluxia a bit, I think would make for an extremely interesting plot point. Playing a game of which is the real Strelitzia as Sora navigates his way through this new realm. When Marluxia's somebody returns as Lauriam, maybe with his memories intact and with the Keyblade, I think it makes sense for him to join the Guardians of Light. Or perhaps him and Elrena will go on their own adventure trying to find Strelitzia, where maybe they continue following loose ends they potentially found before joining the organizations like theorized in the last video, or then they encounter this Strelitzia who is evil, a data recreation by the Master, but it's not really Strelitzia. Yet this is Lauriam's first time seeing his sister in years, forever. And then there's so many layers you could peel back with a story like this. Ventus would have to directly confront his trauma and guilt, largely because of his involvement in Strelitzia's death. This could also lead to the return of the Darknesses, which even though the Lost Masters are going to be the antagonists for right now, I theorize the Darknesses are going to eventually become the true villains of this saga. And the Master's connection with them is a little unknown still, so whether he's a part of that or against that is yet to be seen. Similar to Union Cross, Strelitzia might be the character that really drives this plot forward. Even though she was only around for maybe 20 minutes, I'm assuming we're going to see a lot more than 20 minutes of her in Kingdom Hearts 4. I'm assuming she's going to be a big character in Quadratum, and probably a character Sora ends up interacting with a lot as the mysteries unfold. Even in those few moments we got of her before her demise, we saw a character with so much personality, and I would love to see that expanded upon as Sora interacts with her, as many other characters interact with her, whether it be in Quadratum or whether it's interacting with this other version of the character. It's a little unknown how long exactly she's been there, or if time even works in that way. Maybe time has no real value in that world. Yet the Master does seem to be in Kingdom Hearts 4's trailer, even though Nomura doesn't want to confirm it. But assuming that is, or believing that that is, the last time we saw the Master was with the Strelitzia in the white coat. But if that is the case, then that would mean Sora is in a lot more of a dangerous position. Even more dangerous than already being in this afterworld. This person showing him the ropes and pretending to be his friend could actually not be. I think either way, we get some really interesting stories out of this. And kind of rambling a bit and talking about how Nomura mentioned that other characters aren't really going to take as big of a role in Kingdom Hearts 4, mostly referencing to characters in the Birth by Sleep or Days trio. I've always talked about that and said how I find that a little weird or hard to believe in some instances, because even though Kingdom Hearts 4 is seen as this sort of reset for the Kingdom Hearts franchise, or sort of as this new arc, this new era for Kingdom Hearts, it can very much so be that, but we are definitely continuing a story that we've had previously, at least to a degree. Strelitzia being there directly implies that. Strelitzia having connections to characters like Lauriam, characters like Ventus, characters like Elrona, basically any Union Cross character that still exists. You have the Subject X plot line. There's a lot in the setup for Kingdom Hearts 4 that directly implies that we're going to be getting a lot of continuations from stories previous, from theories previous. So it would be kind of weird if they missed out on these potential stories, these potential interactions, potential plot points, and just kind of threw them all away just so they could focus more on Sora and Riku, which is going to happen anyways. Essentially, my line of thought is that for Kingdom Hearts 4, we're going to have basically most of the game being about Sora attempting to get out of Quadratum, and simultaneously there's going to be a plot building up in the realm of Light side, where they're dealing with the return of the Foretellers, they're dealing with Luciu, they're dealing with this other Strelitzia, Lauriam comes back, Ventus's memories awaken, and I think a lot of the lore that we've come to know and love about Kingdom Hearts is going to be continued on that side of the fence. While Quadratum, Sora, Strelitzia here might be where we get introduced to a lot of new elements of Kingdom Hearts. Around 3 years ago, a hidden message was discovered in the files for Kingdom Hearts 3. This is a message that when loading a certain credits map shows up in the game itself. That is actually kind of spooky. This hidden message was discovered by popular creator in the community, 13th Vessel. They specialize in archiving and revealing things never before seen or shown off in Kingdom Hearts. I highly recommend checking them out. The message that they found when trying to load this certain map says this: "You are not the true Keyblade bearer." Now, this was something that was in the game before Remind even came, before we even got our first DLC for Kingdom Hearts 3. This was found on the PS4 version of the game. I'm unaware if this still exists on current builds of the game as well. Now, we don't hear the term Keyblade bearer that often nowadays when referring to Keyblade wielders in the series. Realistically, to an extent, they could be interchangeable phrases. Though in the context of Kingdom Hearts, when people think of the term Keyblade bearer, they think of those early stages of Kingdom Hearts when Sora was the perceived chosen one for the Keyblade. Something many would think is a retcon, although I'd argue slightly it never was. In Kingdom Hearts 1 itself, you had multiple different Keyblades, and even in the secret ending, Deep Dive, you would see another character using it as well. Although the history of the Keyblade would be expanded upon, Sora has been acknowledged on multiple instances as having prowess with the Keyblade, unlike many others. This being partially due to a simpler view of the world and his untainted desire to follow his heart. However, there's been one thing that has changed in this story. One thing that changed very early on in the very beginning that led to the series, the story that we have now. Sora truly wasn't supposed to get the Keyblade at the time. It was Riku. Back on Destiny Islands, when Sora was face to face with Riku as he was being consumed by darkness, that was supposed to be Riku in that moment receiving the Kingdom Key. But it was Sora instead. Riku was the one who had the ceremony performed on him at that age, and was meant to be the protector of that group, which in a way, he still acts that way now. Him and Sora definitely have a little brother and big brother dynamic going on. Now, Riku would end up getting a Keyblade anyways, though through a much darker path than Sora's, so it's very likely that if the opposite scenario, or perhaps the original scenario, were to happen, that Sora as well would have eventually become a Keyblade wielder too, similar to how Kairi also would eventually become a Keyblade wielder. Now, back to that phrase, you are not the true Keyblade bearer. The other part of this that makes this phrase so interesting in the context of a KH3 without DLC is, could this have been a planned secret boss or arena? In this video by 13th Vessel, some of the maps that were apparently taken out of the game, or battle gates that weren't fully fleshed out, possibly had ties to Kingdom Hearts key back cover, relations to the earliest point that we know about in Kingdom Hearts' story. When you take these little bits of information and compare them to what we know now, what we've seen from Remind, what we've seen from games after Kingdom Hearts 3 Remind and Melody of Memory and Dark Road, what the story is seemingly becoming with Kingdom Hearts 4, it seems like they're going to be playing around a lot with that chosen one philosophy with Sora. We've even seen some things since that kind of conflict with that a bit. Xehanort being the perceived child of prophecy, Ventus being seen as one of the true lights, Ventus having very deep ties to Sora, as Sora will be holding on to his heart for a very long period. Something that makes this even more interesting is the current story and Yozora. Yozora is one of the most mysterious characters in Kingdom Hearts, mostly because we don't know anything about him, just little hints and interpretations. In a scene in Toy Box, Rex is convinced Sora is this Yozora character he played in his video game, despite Sora not looking that similar to him aside from having the cool anime look. However, Yozora looks way more like Riku, especially KH3's Riku. This is even acknowledged by Sora himself, which leads to further questioning. Donald bluntly tells Sora,
"Simple, that's not you.
Say, Riku would make a great action figure."
Must be him.
No, it's me. I've got the black clothes and,
So what?
And the interaction doesn't go much further than that. Toy Box perhaps is one of the most mysterious worlds in Kingdom Hearts 3 because of these interactions. I dubbed this the KH4 bait world, because a lot of things here feel like they are teasing story elements of future games. Toy Box, aside from the ending interaction with Xehanort, feels relatively isolated from the rest of the plot of KH3, but not isolated from the Kingdom Hearts plot as a whole. This is one of the biggest reasons I think Toy Box might be a world we definitely revisit in future Kingdom Hearts games. Verum Rex made its first appearance in Toy Box. Sora's first time hearing about Yozora is from Rex, who was convinced Sora is him. This was in Toy Box. We even get to dive into the world of Verum Rex for a little bit, which I think might be a bigger deal than we let on, once again, in Toy Box. You can even see the city in the distance. I might be looking at the city Sora is standing in Kingdom Hearts 4's trailer from here. One other thing to mention to make what I'm implying make a little bit more sense, just slightly, is that Yozora mentions that he knows a Sora, and apparently our Sora is not them, which is just... what? Okay, the fact that there is even a Sora in that world makes you wonder what the parallels are. We don't know if there are Keyblades that exist in any normal sense in this reality. Though I think rather than the wider interpretation of Yozora supposedly being some parallel to Sora, as slightly represented by them saying the Kingdom Hearts 1 opening quotes in both endings of the Remind secret boss, this being there probably to represent a contrast or a parallel between the two characters.
I've been
having these weird thoughts lately.
like, is any of this for real or not?
I think that it's possible, connecting to what I said earlier about Riku and how he was originally supposed to receive the Keyblade in that moment, that Yozora could be a parallel of a Riku who had gotten the Keyblade back on Destiny Islands instead of what we got later. Remember, Riku is also in this world. He's also a part of the story. Although we haven't seen much or been teased much about Riku's involvement, we know that he ends up there off of Melody of Memory, off of the secret ending to Kingdom Hearts 3. Riku's position in this story is one that is very interesting and one that I think should be talked about a lot more. As Sora acknowledges himself, Yozora looks a lot more like Riku than Sora does him. Now, I'll be the first to admit, there's plenty of holes in that line of thinking. I mean, plenty. Yozora doesn't even have a Keyblade, but we also don't know much about him or that world in general. When I say the word parallel in regards to comparing, these aren't one-to-one variations, but rather that's what they represent for their universes. In this context, meaning Sora is the Yozora of his universe, while Yozora is the Sora of his. This line of thought all stemming from that little piece of dialogue behind a map that you can load in the game files. What I'm presenting more so is an idea that this could be a message to Sora. You are not the true Keyblade bearer. Though the question left out of the many would be, just who's delivering it? The Master of Masters is easily the most interesting, mysterious, and important semi-new character in the Kingdom Hearts franchise. He will be a major player in the coming saga, and if you aren't aware of his importance now, you'll figure it out soon enough. He's the master of all the foretellers, the creator of the Book of Prophecies, and is the oldest character / entity in the Kingdom Hearts universe to date that we know about aside from literal darkness itself. Discussion pertaining to the Master is a hotspot for theories and speculation about new story events. A lot of lore and what we know about the Kingdom Hearts series involve him in some sort of way. I very recently rewatched the entirety of Union Cross, beginning to end, and nearly 2 years later, the story is still amazing. Of course, with any rewatch of the Kingdom Hearts story, I tend to notice new things or look at things differently because the series itself is always ever evolving with its mountain of lore, and I want to discuss some thoughts I don't see mentioned too often, at least among the general space. To cut to the point, the Master of Masters is not human. I believe that his identity, if he truly has one, does not matter in the grand scheme of things. It isn't a matter of the popular debate of who the Master is, but rather what. What is the Master of Masters? Think about it. The Master claims he didn't have a master himself when he was younger, was there at the start of the Keyblade War as far as we know, which is apparently the same time period on which darkness took on this form, going along to say how darkness looked like them. He also confirms there were wielders aside from him, but that they don't really count, which is a very bizarre statement to make. He said all of this in a single cutscene, by the way. A cutscene where he was talking about his origins along with those of the Keyblade War with Luxu. There's also this very bizarre moment in another cutscene where he is talking with Luxu and then teleports behind him, after causing all the power in the room to go out as he's talking. This is an ending to a scene where Luxu was in despair after hearing about the origins of the war, which made him feel like this fight was pointless with darkness, never ending. The Master didn't take lightly to this and reassured Luxu there is a greater plan at play, and there is a true plan to defeat the darkness forever. It was almost as if the Master did this to demonstrate his omnipotence, as maybe a way to show Luxu to have faith in him. The Master also did the same sort of demonstration of power when taking Xehanort's Keyblade in Dark Road, when Xehanort would summon it on him. This interaction was also really funny. This was an interaction about trust, Master asking, "Do you trust me now?" and Xehanort just says even less, which I think all of us would feel the same in that position. What is he? We've seen characters in Kingdom Hearts teleport through portals and through just sheer speed, but since this is Union Cross, there is a gray area here where it could just be a lack of animation. Though the way this was done with the room going dark, all the monitors shutting off, and then the Master just suddenly appearing behind him, it seemed very intentional. Keep these bizarre moments in mind as I also discuss the Master and Darkness's interesting relationship. Throughout the scenes we see with the Master and Darkness in Union Cross, while it's clear they aren't necessarily friends, the Master and Darkness talk like they're very familiar with each other. This making sense, as if the Master is going to make a plan to defeat Darkness, he must know his enemy, right? Though considering the vague information we do have on the Master's past, it makes you wonder just how far back the Master and Darkness truly do go. Like, I wouldn't say they're friends at all, but they're playful enough to the point where it almost feels like they both know they can't beat each other directly. Like they're both playing a game of chess I've described in the past. That's how this cutscene feels, where they're both moving pawns and pieces like Xehanort and Ericus kind of are, and that's what this whole thing is. That's what the whole war is, the light versus darkness war, the Master and Darkness playing a chess game. But the question here is the Master a piece on the board, or is he the one playing? Well, technically speaking, everyone's a piece on the board, but that's food for thought. Darkness says one line to the Master in particular that I find curious. You came to this world just to end it? Of course the Master was around before Daybreak Town, but the specific usage of you came to this world is interesting. This would come after or during a conversation where the Master is just describing and rambling about his plan and the whole thing between darkness and light. But this is just me listing bizarre moments that have happened in cutscenes featuring the Master. None of these scenes individually or by themselves mean he isn't human. He at least relates to them. He at least relates to other humans, and whether he's human or not, he definitely sympathizes in some way at least with those who do have hearts. Even going on to say how this conflict with darkness isn't necessarily a good versus bad story, but is about honoring the dignity of those with hearts. The Master not being human or being some sort of omnipotent being makes sense when you reference his knowledge and his power. He was straight up able to steal Xehanort's Keyblade and Dark Road, and not quite in the same way Riku did in KH1, but just through what looked like sheer power and will, though he did it effortlessly. Something that always made me have this as a tiny thought in the back of my mind was when we learned of the Master's eye in the no-name Keyblade. Looking at his eye, if it's his actual eye and not just some sort of spell or anything, which the Master probably easily could come up with a spell like that, it makes me think he could be of some sort of other species, perhaps one that's very in tune with both light and darkness. And to make a Star Wars reference here, the equivalent would be kind of what Yoda's species is. The species Yoda comes from is a species very in tune with the Force, more gifted with it than most others. This could be a comparison for the Master. If the Master is traveling through time in a similar vein Luxu is, it's entirely possible that he has used multiple vessels over time, though I feel like if he could do that himself, there wouldn't be a big need for Luxu. So I think the Master likely doesn't actually need Luxu at all to move through time. But this brings up the question, per time travel rules, does the Master have a form? Which assumingly he must, since otherwise he wouldn't need Luxu. Would he? Could the Master just be a cloak with a heart? What Luxu is doing could be for a much greater purpose, one more similar to the purpose the Master described to Luxu before he would leave with the box. Though it's been proven that the Master is willing to hold back the truth until he deems it absolutely necessary. Like with Luxu, in fact. The foretellers, everyone's roles in general, all have little lies and manipulation from the Master put into them. You can say it needs to be that way, but it shows that the Master is willing to lie to his peers for a greater purpose. Not to say he does it all the time, but the Master isn't exempt from giving out half-truths and perhaps even manipulating the audience into thinking a certain way. What I'm thinking here could kind of tie into the Master is light theory, meaning perhaps the Master is formless, and similar to how you can't really defeat darkness without a form, maybe it's the same for the Master, or for light in general, explaining perhaps how he's seemingly a sole survivor from his time period. Or do things like that only apply to darkness? The Master could be looking for a candidate to harbor his light, or maybe the Master needs none of that. Maybe he's just some other type of species or being we've never seen or heard about yet in the series, one extremely in tune with the light or darkness. Master has been relaxing Quadratum for some time now, likely waiting there until Sora arrived, and whatever Sora ends up doing there perhaps will kickstart his big plan. Whether the Master is human or not human may not mean a thing for the series. I mean, we do have a lot of different Disney characters roaming around who aren't exactly human, most being humanoid though. However, Kingdom Hearts isn't a story about forms and secret identities. It's a story about hearts and how we use our hearts to connect and impact with others. The Master's plan and whatever his role in all of this is, no matter what it may seem, will tie into that core concept of the story at the end of the day. I hope this got some people's brains turning. This thought has been on my mind for a while. While there's no real answer here, no hard 100%, I do believe there's definitely an argument to be had. Once upon a time, Kingdom Hearts 3 was a game that we could barely even dream of. And now we have Kingdom Hearts 4. Well, not yet. Hopefully soon. This new game coming around, the 4th numbered entry in the Kingdom Hearts franchise, also bodes a new saga we'll be experiencing, the Lost Masters arc. You might have heard of them, unlike Eric is here. Kingdom Hearts 3 was a game that took a lot of setup, lots of build up, years of it, multiple games, multiple console generations, and lots of time. Now that that saga is over and we're moving on to something new, it's admittedly hard to predict where a story like this will fully go, but I want to talk about what led us here. Not to Kingdom Hearts 4 specifically, but this saga, this arc, which I would argue has been being built up for quite some time, perhaps just as long by the time Kingdom Hearts 4 releases. I don't mean just since Remind either, or the epilogue or the secret ending. I'm talking about in 2013 when a little game over in Japan released called Kingdom Hearts Key. Not everyone knows about this game, but you probably do know of its past iteration, Kingdom Hearts Union Cross. One of the Kingdom Hearts franchise's biggest claims to fame comes in its story. It's a series where almost every and anything matters, even for games like this, which has had a big effect into cultivating the mad theorists we have today, always looking for the next plot twist, the next surprise, and the answers to many questions in this magical but mysterious universe. Kingdom Hearts Key is a saga of games that were releasing during the build-up to Kingdom Hearts 3. Every so often, we'd get episodic updates continuing the story that took place hundreds of years before even the events of Birth by Sleep, perhaps more. The story started pretty simple, being about the timeline of events that led to the Keyblade War, but grew into what would be a behemoth of lore to tackle for even the best of analysts in the community. From murder mysteries to realms overlapping to characters we've seen before appearing in the past, and of course, time travel. This all would sound like a headache to anyone else, and it definitely was during some moments, but when things would all come together, we loved it. The Key Saga story is so loved, in fact, it's pretty much cultivated its own subsection of the fanbase. People obsessed with the Lost Masters, the Foretellers, and the Union leaders, and their own player characters. Admittedly, it's an aesthetic for Kingdom Hearts that isn't preferred by a lot, but is very distinct from the rest of the series that primarily follows Sora, Dawn, and Goofy, and it does have its own sort of charm. Due to this story happening alongside the build-up to Kingdom Hearts 3, it was assumed for a long time that they would connect at some point. Eventually, Kingdom Hearts 3's release came closer and closer, but Key wasn't really showing any signs of ending its story. A lot of us assumed it was going to end before 3 came out. Story updates were still ongoing, however, and characters from games we've played before were still showing up in this time period, showing up in the past, which left us with loads of questions still unanswered. By the time everyone experienced Kingdom Hearts 3, we realized that Key was never really a game meant to build up Kingdom Hearts 3 at all. In fact, it was just building towards what would happen after.
What do you want us to do?
We have to focus on what comes after. There's no use thinking of ways to change events that we know are gonna happen.
But what about all of those who are here now? And the ones who will be here when the darkness finally comes? Are we to abandon all of them?
Come on, are you telling me that you think the world can be saved by just 7 people?
We have to at least try. With enough Keyblade wielders, we could...
Well, if you want to give it a shot.
This story would create a world, a cast of characters that would all likely be used to tell future stories to come. Since 2013, this world in the background has been lingering and slowly building towards what we would see glimpses of in Kingdom Hearts 4's reveal. There were tiny moments in the main story for Kingdom Hearts 3 that expand upon Key's story, though they were mostly there to narrow our questions and create more, like with Marluxia and Larxene, or the secret reports, which would expand upon future storylines and later updates for Key. The epilogue was the most direct Key related scene in the game, directly building towards the next saga with the massive reveal, which this scene by itself was almost entirely built up by the movie that released in the 2.8 remix. In the base game, Key had pretty minimal to do with what was going on in Kingdom Hearts 3's story, at least with our current information. This is a story for Kingdom Hearts that has been just waiting to be told in the background, waiting to surface. And while part of it has ended with Union Cross coming to its conclusion and Dark Road not being that far off, the last piece of the Key saga, the center of it all, Missing Link, is still coming, which is something story-wise we should definitely keep our eyes on. This era of Kingdom Hearts that takes place in the past is the future of Kingdom Hearts' story. The shape of Kingdom Hearts 4's story is molded by games on your phone, which may sound unappealing to some people, but as someone who's experienced all these stories and will continue to, I'm excited for what's to come, and you should be too. This new world we're about to discover as Sora is familiar to us. It shares similarities to the real world, real life, of course without the gigantic monsters in the sky. This is a story that's new for Kingdom Hearts, but it perhaps is one that has been lingering in the thoughts of a certain director for quite some time. A very long time ago, we were introduced to an idea, a concept for a game called Versus 13. This game was led by our Kingdom Hearts director Tetsuya Nomura, a game that would later turn into Final Fantasy 15 as focuses shifted and he wouldn't be involved in the project anymore, as it became a lot different from the original vision. We were introduced to this project in 2008, half a decade before Kingdom Hearts Key's original inception. The original concept for this game was going to be a very dark story, a fantasy based on reality, it was referred as. These concepts have resurfaced themselves in what appears to be the untold story of a new character named Yozora. This story, however, is not going to be a copy and paste of Versus 13, seeing as the game was never released, we probably wouldn't even know if it was. Though there's many factors that are inherently different here. Keyblades, Sora's presence, and the idea that it's the other side of our reality in Kingdom Hearts are contributing factors to that. But the influence of Versus 13 in the Quadratum and Yozora story will surely be a sight to behold and has many fans following the old project eager for what's to come. The mysteries a story like this may bring will be refreshing to any type of Kingdom Hearts fan. It'll still be the Kingdom Hearts we've experienced over the years, but with new characters and perhaps a even more intricate plot, which is saying a lot for Kingdom Hearts. The Lost Masters, Yozora, and the many mysteries still lingering from Kingdom Hearts 3 and Remind, I think Kingdom Hearts 4 conceptually is in a good place, and I'm anticipating seeing more of it, and even more so having the game in my hands, which hopefully isn't too far away. Many of the ideas at play here making themselves known in Kingdom Hearts 4 have years of history behind them. From Versus 13 to Union Cross, the story and ideas that shape Kingdom Hearts 4 are a decade in the making, maybe more so. What that story becomes, we can't really predict. We are heading into uncharted territory for the series with this new arc, new saga, and I'm just happy to be along for the ride. It should be exciting.